All right, so I'm here with Clint Mitchell. Clint is all grown up now, but during my time with him, it took me a long time to finally get him out on the football field. He was an excellent athlete in really lots of sports. Became our quarterback about week 3 or 4 of my first year as a head coach. And it was a great learning experience for me. Clint probably had to deal with a young coach learning a lot. Then Clint went on to college right across the ditch from us, and I managed to wrangle him back to come coach our quarterbacks. And now Clint may hire me one day because so it's been a great for me to watch him grow and watch him be. And I asked, when you have a chance to write a foreword to your book, I just thought back to somebody who I think has done things the right way, and Clint exemplifies that. To me, it was an honor to coach him and to watch what he's done now with his life. Is unbelievable, and watching how many people he's now influenced. He's now at Mobile Christian, and if I make sure I'm right here, you're in some admin role, principal or assistant principal, is that right?
That's correct, high school principal right now.
High school principal, and on the side, he took his team to the state championship in football as an offensive coordinator. So he's slightly multi-talented, but excited to have him on here. And Clint, we're going to kind of go through just the phases of your career. Start off when you were a player and talk about the book obviously you've read is training athletes beyond the game. So that's kind of the theme of what we'll talk about today. But talk about your time at ACA. I know you played multiple sports, had multiple coaches. So what are some things that maybe stood out to you during your time there?
Sure, man. Well, first of all, thank you. That was incredibly kind what you said. But going back to my days as athlete, which seem more distant now than they did just a few years ago even, but I was incredibly blessed. I was raised in Fort Walton Beach, Florida for a long time. And right before I started high school, my family moved us to Montgomery, Alabama, which is where we started Alabama Christian, which is where I met Coach Simpson for the first time as he was there. Up to that, up until late in my high school career, I viewed myself as kind of a basketball guy. That was what my family had always done. That was kind of where my passions lied. I spent time off season, during season, always kind of training for that, and managed to, in my opinion, train myself into being an okay basketball player, I guess. And that was kind of my aspirations to do that. But I remember ever since, Coach Simpson got to Alabama Christian, kind of started there, he was always kind of in my ear about potentially playing and things like that. And I didn't really see the fit for a long time until I got to the point, it was right before my senior year, and he had just taken over as the head man, and had a very real conversation with me about playing football, and just kind of talked about, no pressure. If you don't want to do it, you just need to come out and try it. Just come out and try it. There's no harm in trying. And that conversation really changed things for me as far as high school goes. It's kind of opened my eyes to seeing the value of being not just multi-sport, but not, closing myself off from new experiences. And I think that's been one of the biggest things in my life that's kind of stood out from that time. But going back to high school, we had a great time. We were fortunate, we were the beginning, I felt like, of a short turnaround there at Alabama Christian as far as kind of wins and losses. And we were blessed to have a fairly talented football team and win some football games and got to meet some great guys and that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And, I still talk and communicate with some of those guys that I wouldn't have had that bond with if I hadn't made that decision. I roomed with some guys in college that I ended up playing football with. So, it definitely did. It definitely shaped not only me then as a high school athlete, but as you mentioned, that there's no way that I, end up coaching football or doing some of the stuff that I'm doing now if I don't, take that shot at the beginning. But had some great experiences, some great people at Alabama Christian Academy gave me some awesome opportunities, Coach Simpson included, very early, for pretty much anybody. But I was very fortunate in those experiences and opportunities have helped me get to the place where I'm at now, for sure.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, now you're on the other side of the curtain. You went from the athlete, and you did it at a young age. I remember you were maybe 19, 20 years old on the sideline with me already kind of going through coaching. And I don't want to make it football specific, but some of the lessons I think that we can learn, and I think, now that you're on this side of the curtain, you're kind of seeing how you have to be intentional sometimes as a coach to get what you want across. What are some things you can remember maybe as a player, and whether it's from basketball? I know you played basketball. I know you did track for me. I know you did football, all of them. So what are some of the maybe the life lessons that you relate back to now from your high school days?
I think it's one of those things every athlete over the span of their career thinks about coaches that they've enjoyed playing for, thinks about coaches that maybe they didn't enjoy as much playing for. And there are obvious, there's different reasons for that based off the athlete or based off the experience. But one thing that always stuck out to me was, as an athlete, was the coaches that you could tell were intentional in making those relationships with you as an athlete. I think sometimes we struggle, and I'm preaching to myself here as much as anybody else on the coaching side of things, of getting wrapped up in, okay, I've got to have job security by making sure that I win ball games. I've got to make sure that, we're scoring points if we're an offensive guy, or not allowing points if I'm a defensive guy, or so on and so forth. And we get into the X's and O's and all this type of stuff. And we forget to, just check up on the athletes outside of football. And I think that's one of the biggest things in my life as an athlete that stuck out to me, that really motivated me to become a coach, was the relational aspect of it and seeing how they had an impact. I remember, I was fortunate. I was smart enough where I could kind of do a lot of different things as far as my profession went. And I had no idea really what I wanted to do. So I sat down one day, and I remember talking with somebody, and they said, Clint, who are some of the people that you feel like have had great impacts on you? And the first people that came to my mind were those teachers and those coaches who legitimately cared, not just about me, but cared about my family and my not just, physical growth or how well I performed, but cared about my spiritual growth, and cared about, like I said, how are you doing today? And were willing to check up on me and provide opportunities for me to, come over and hang out at their house, or fill in the blank with whatever. I think that kind of helps you, as a young person, when you see that and you're able to experience that. That's what motivated me on the coaching side of things. I want to be that type of coach who makes an impact beyond the X's and O's, beyond points scored or points allowed. I want to be the guy who, when an athlete graduates from school, that they feel like they can come back and talk 2 years later. If they have a problem in their home life, or if they're having spiritual problems or something along those lines, I want to be that guy who they can always come back and say, Coach, I'm dealing with this, and I really just need somebody to talk to, or I need somebody to bounce ideas off of. I was fortunate to have some like that in high school. And like I said, that really kind of shaped my philosophy on how I wanted to be, even at a young age. Like you mentioned, I got started very young, and it was different. I'll never forget Denise Ainsworth, who was athletic director at the time at Alabama Christian, pulled me into her office one of the last days of my high school career and said, Clint, you interested in coaching? And I was still in high school when we had this conversation. And it was one of those things I never really thought about, but that conversation kind of sparked, well, there have been some people who've had a profound impact on me in that profession. That's kind of helped shape me moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get back to one of the things you mentioned on the spiritual side, because, now our paths are a little different now, because I'm in the public aspect. So I've got to be a little more,
for sure.
The word is there, but I try to be a little more intentionally and careful with what I do. And I know you're in the private sector, but the goal is the same, whether we're in the public or the private, is to use athletics to develop kids, the full body of the kid. And above that, the spiritual aspect. So talk a little bit about maybe some things you're doing now as a coach, or maybe some things you experience as a player that hey, that's how sports really can impact somebody a lot more than just, like you mentioned, a game.
Sure. And like you said, my arena is different probably than a lot of people who, than like yours is now, or a lot of people who might read this book, and that I am in the private sector, and there's various opinions on whether that's good or bad. I view us even today at a private school, and we are a Christian affiliated school, but this is still a mission field. We're a Christian school, but not all of our students, not all of our families are Christians. There's nothing. I'll tell a family that comes in interviews with us, one of the things I try to say to every family that comes through is that there's nothing more important to me than trying to help your son or daughter get to heaven at the end of all this. And that's something that, we can say that here, but that doesn't make it any less important in other places, like you said. I think one of the biggest things, especially with youth nowadays, is they're so good at picking up when you're being genuine. They can always tell if you're a real person or if you're being inauthentic in any ways. I think they are very good at picking up when your concern is for them, or whether your concern is for yourself. Am I looking for the next job? Am I looking for promotion? Am I looking for bonuses? Am I looking for championship rings? Or am I legitimately investing in their lives? And again, it goes back to, like I said a minute ago, I think how you interact with your athletes or with your students can say so much without anything you have to actually speak out of your mouth. That constant example is something that's priceless. That constant presence is something for some of our kids that is priceless. And again, I go back to, we're at a private school, but we have a lot of kids who go home to families that they don't have a strong male role model at home. And I know that's the case across the nation, across the school, whether it's private or public or anything in between. There are a lot of our youth who don't have that example or that presence, whether it's at home for one reason or another. So, that's where I kind of view it's our responsibility to make sure we do our best to provide that. And like I said, whether it's we're able to say verbally what we think, or if it's more of just that relationship and being there, I think that's as biblical as anything else, honestly, is just being there for somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think to me, that's the goal. And it's odd because now that I'm kind of in the other side in the public realm, of course, I'm still in the South, so it's a little bit
right.
different from some guys that are up in the Northeast, but people still want the values of what the Bible teaches, I believe. And you mentioned it. They don't want me to quote something or want me to do some public prayer in front of it. They want me to live it,
Right.
And I think that's the goal for coaches that may read this book or be interested in this lifestyle is nobody cares a whole lot what you say. And you hit it on the head when you said genuine. If you're a real athletic, sly guy, good looking, that's awesome. I didn't get any of that. And so I have to be genuine, with what God gave me. And I think you hit it, and just be who you are. And the kids, they're going to respect that, and they'll see the
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I've been leaving off these interviews here, Clint, with, you're getting to talk to, and now you are literally who I wrote the book for. You are a young coach. Now you're moving on up there. You're catching up to me, but you are kind of moving up. But my demographic for this was younger coaches. Of course, any coach can read it of any sport, but the demographic was you're getting into coaching. And I know when I was a young coach, even when I had the pleasure of coaching you, I didn't recognize the impact that we have. Like, I didn't recognize the weight of my words. I didn't recognize the weight of my actions, and so that's why I wrote this was maybe we can help somebody else. So if you had a chance, though, to talk to a room full of coaches of every sport, doesn't matter gender, doesn't matter sport, doesn't matter whatever, what would you tell them?
That's tough, and I don't want to sound like I'm echoing myself or anything, but I truly do believe, and I try to build. You mentioned I've been very fortunate to be able to progress a good bit in my career, and I think something that I always go back to. One of the reasons I think that's been the case is just trying to build and develop those relationships with the people that I come into contact with, whether that's the people that I work with, whether it's people who are on staff with me, whether it's people who work with me on the football field, as far as other coaches, whether it's the players, whether it's students that I'm passing down the hallway. We go back to one of your first questions about, me starting off as an athlete. If I hadn't had that high thought of you, if I thought you were just somebody who was out for yourself, I probably would have been less inclined to have come out and help, done what I could on the football field. I just go back to, I think that's so significant, when you're able to realize, like you said, the amazing impact that you have on the students that you come into contact with. One of the words that you mentioned was so true, the gravity of the words that you speak to a kid. There are things that we might say in passing, or we might say, this is just me coaching tough or whatever it is. And that one phrase will be something that sticks with that athlete for the rest of their life. And that's it's that type of, not severity, I don't know if that's the right word, but that type of power that comes with the words that you have. So not necessarily that I think you have to be careful, because I think if your intentions are right, I think, again, if you're able to check why and the means of how you're doing things, I think that like we talked about, that genuineness and that truth will flow through you. But I go back to, it's all about relationships. And if you're young, if you're getting into coaching, I would encourage you to invest in, obviously, the athletes that you have. I'd encourage you to invest in your lower levels. One of the things, I've had experience now. I started off, like Coach said, as an 18-year-old assistant, and I've worked up, and I've been the head of, at a private school, you're head of a program pretty much. And even public schools, I'm sure you do a lot with the local school and the elementaries and things like that. and not just investing on the kids who are present right now, but investing in those kids who are going to come up through your program and remaining invested in the lives of the students who have come through your program. I think that's huge because, again, your impact, while it might just be through coaching, does not have to be just in the years that they're in high school. Your impact can be one, if you want it to be, one that, again, lasts a lifetime. And hopefully that you'll take that responsibility, you'll take that challenge, if you will, serious enough to make sure it's a positive impact for the span of as long as it possibly lasts. So that's the biggest thing. Like I said, that sounds probably very cookie cutter. That sounds probably very cliche, but I think it is all about relationships, and not just saying that because it's easy to say, but taking the time to make the phone call, send the text, bring them up and meet with them, and show them that you're there. Not just say it, but show them that you're there for them in many ways.
That's right. And, I'm not going to get into it on this one because it's hard for me to do. But that last chapter I had to write about mistakes was that you hit it on the head, is when they leave your program, a lot of times they leave your vision, and you just touch on the impact you can have on them. So I thought that was very profound. A lot of coaches care a lot about them when it's a give-take relationship, but when it loses where they're not giving anything to you, that it doesn't end. It shouldn't end. We're beyond the game is the goal. Last thing I want to go, because you kind of opened the can, so we're going to give you a shot here.
Okay.
Married guy, you've got children. Okay, I'm a married guy. I have children. How does that work out as a coach?
It can be tough, and I think you've got to be very conscientious of it. One of the things that I have always tried to verbalize to my wife is that my belief is that I am, first of all, my main priority is to serve God through everything that I do. And after that, very closely, is to be an excellent husband. And then very closely after that is to be an excellent father. And I've tried to communicate to my wife, if there's ever a time where you feel like I'm not doing excellent at any of those responsibilities, I want you to let me know, because we view our relationship as partners, and I hope she'll be honest with me in that. But it can be tough because, as we've talked about before, if you're successful, if you have the ability to be successful, whether it's in football, whether it's in any business, it's very tempting to spend more and more time with that work. And what I would encourage any young coach to do is make sure that, for the hours that you're dedicating to your program, for the hours that you're dedicating to your children that are on the football field, you've got to make sure that you don't forsake your own children. You got to make sure that you don't forsake your own family. And like I said, that can be tough. There's a little bit of understanding, I think, that has to come from your family when you get into coaching, because it is going to be different. My kids are very, very young still. I've got one that just turned 3 and a 2-month-old at home. So they don't fully understand right now. They're still just enjoying being around all the guys when they're able to be around them and things like that. But I think my wife, we definitely early on had to have that understanding that things are going to be a little bit different when it comes time to be in season. But like I said, making sure that I have that time dedicated, making sure that I have that time for them is incredibly important. And I'll say this again, just to reiterate, hopefully your goal, whatever age you are, if you have that family, if you are married, if you have kids, will be to do that, to be a husband and to be a father first, or to be a wife and to be a mother first, because your coaching jobs will come and go. The kids that you train, some will like you, some won't. But you've really only got one shot when it comes to your wife and to your kids. And I hope that you'll take that seriously to anybody. I'd say that to anybody.
Yeah. And a lot of things, that's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what everyone needs to hear. And I've been through 0-10. I took the job here. It was a rough job. And so we did 0-10. And the only person that wanted to hear from me was my wife. So
absolutely.
You said coaches' jobs are going to come and go, and the cheers will turn to boos.
That's right.
If you do that right, she's there for life. And so great job, Clint. Go ahead.
Well, and I remember even you, when you were back at Alabama Christian, I remember as we started coaching, I saw a picture on Facebook the other day of Braden standing beside me out there on the track while we're coaching track, so it's as much as you can integrate your family and they can be a part of it. I think that helps as well, but making sure you keep track, keeping priorities straight can be tough for anybody. But I think if we constantly evaluate, say, okay, this is who I am at my core, and this is what's important to me, I think that's something that helps us out.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect, man. I think that's a great way to kind of end as far as a recorded part here. And,
Sure.
if you guys are interested in finding out more about Clint, he's over at Mobile Christian. If you're in that area, if I had a kid growing in Mobile, I'd send him there because you got a man of God, I think, leading that school. So, Clint, I appreciate you, being on here for us.
Appreciate that, man.